Member Roger Tobos, this is the moderator. I promoted you to a panelist. If we could do a microphone check and a camera check.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. The time is 9 a.m. I call to order the December 10th, 2020 meeting of the Contractors State Licensing Board to order. My name is David L. Torre, CSLB's board chair. I want to thank the board members for attending today's video teleconference board meeting. Board members, we're going to try to use our cameras during the meeting. To mitigate any potential bandwidth issues, we ask that you turn off your video camera when you are not speaking. When you would like to comment at any time throughout the meeting, please turn on your camera and select the raise your hand icon in the WebEx application. I will call on board members to speak. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute and turn off your camera. You will also need to click the raise your hand icon to lower your hand. Shelley Jones is our host and moderator today. While this is the first time Shelley is moderating CSLB's board meeting, she has moderated several board meetings for other boards throughout DCA. Welcome, Shelley. Also, joining us today, Registrar David Fote, Chief Deputy Registrar Tanya Corcoran, CSLB staff, and our board legal counsel, Jason Hurtado. Before we begin our regular agenda items, I want to touch on the closure of CSLB public offices, which includes closing headquarters and investigation center public counters and the 7 testing centers. As registrar, David Fote updated the board last Friday. CSLB and other state agencies closed offices to the public beginning on Monday, December 7th, pursuant to the governor's stay-at-home orders in response to the rise in COVID-19 cases. The office closures will last at least 3 weeks. Staff are busy notifying licensees, applicants, and consumers. Exam applicants with a test date during the closure have been notified, and their exams will be rescheduled. CSLB security officers will be on site at CSLB headquarters to accept official documents at the front entrance door. Additional steps staff took on Friday to prepare for the closure, including ensuring that only essential staff come in person to CSLB offices, posting signage at CSLB offices, updating the CSLB website, notifying licensed schools, issuing an industry bulletin, and providing office closure information on social media. While these are all challenging times, we must do our part to help slow the spread of COVID-19. With that said, let's begin. Feliz, please confirm board member attendance and roll call.
David Del Torre.
Here.
Kevin Albanese.
Here.
Frank Altamira.
Here.
Augie Beltran.
Here.
Ronnie Cobos,
Here.
Miguel Galarza,
Here.
Don Giartano,
Here.
Susan Granzilla,
Here.
Diana Love,
Here.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Marlo Richardson, Marlo,
I'm here.
Jimmy Wayne,
Here.
Johnny Simpson, Johnny,
This is the moderator. Johnny was with us in the attendee panel and was having some connectivity issues, so we're waiting for him to join us again.
okay. Nancy Springer,
Here.
Mary Taggart.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Outstanding. At this time, I ask that you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There was an echo, so it kind of threw me off. Okay, we will begin with agenda item B, which is for public comment and to request agenda items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I'm limiting public comment to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this will be the time where you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on an agenda of a future meeting. Finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Members of the public, if you are with us on WebEx and would like to make a comment, use the chat feature to send the host a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you are joining us on the phone and would like to make a public comment, press *9. We will make any WebEx comments first, followed by the telephone comments. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. You will find instructions on how you can make public comments on the agenda for this meeting posted on our CSLB website. Board members, please turn on your camera and raise your hand if you have an agenda item you would like placed on a future agenda meeting. Okay, I see none. Shelley, please check to see if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board or offer a possible agenda item for a future meeting.
At this time, I see no requests.
Thank you. Next is agenda item C, presentation of certificates of recognition. Today, we are recognizing 2 staff, Amanda Martinez, Enforcement Peace Officer, Special Investigator, and Jane Cradler, I hope I pronounced that right, former analyst with the Public Affairs Office. I will start with reading the certificate of recognition for Amanda. In recognition of your hard work on the Caramonte construction investigation, which resulted in dozens of felony counts being filed. This complex case involved preparing and serving 4 search warrants, reviewing thousands of documents, interviewing multiple victims, and compiling an extensive report. And while working this case, you also completed several other investigations that resulted in criminal filings. Your collaboration with local law enforcement and service and dedication to consumer protection reflect the best of CSLB.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any comments at this time?
How do I raise my hand? I'd like to
The board
thank.
recognizes Albanese.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Amanda, thank you so much for what you do. So often our peace officers go without recognition. They're out there working and diligently working, and they're not in the highlights. And the opportunity to recognize you is appreciated. So thank you for doing this, David. Just a bit about Amanda. Prior to working for CSLB, she had served as a peace officer for the Alcohol Beverage Control, where she developed these effective investigation strategies and strong law enforcement partnerships. Obviously, partnerships that you were able to leverage with the most recent case David talked about. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Amanda's developed very strong working relationships with Napa and Sonoma County District Attorneys, which is also very beneficial in protecting wildfire survivors. So huge thanks to Amanda for sharing your knowledge with other CSLB staff, taking on the more complex criminal cases. Our consumers and the construction industry benefit for your work in addressing these unscrupulous persons operating in the industry, and we thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you so much, and congratulations on the recognition.
Thank you, Kevin.
I would also, is there any other comments? Well, I like to echo Kevin's comments and add that Amanda's work with our executive office staff and the union representing CSLB investigators to convert from the enforcement representative series to special investigators was effective and appreciated. Amanda's diligence and drive to investigate criminal matters and working with law enforcement to develop and serve subpoenas and coordinate criminal investigations is impressive. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, I will now read the certificate of recognition for Jane. In recognition of your 9 years of dedicated work to advance CSLB's mission of consumer protection, your deep commitment to serving vulnerable seniors, in particular, led to the expansion of CSLB's Senior Scam Stoppers into a robust outreach program that provides valuable information to the public and builds essential partnerships with other state agencies and legislators. Your tireless advocacy made a real difference. We wish you all the best as you embark on new adventures as the administrating manager of Board of Architects. Thank you, Jane, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. Any board members, do you have any comments? Reminder to turn your camera and raise your hand. Albanese.
Yeah, Jane, I just wanted to say I've had the opportunity, I think maybe half a dozen of your senior scam stoppers, and they were fantastic. The way that you get the legislators, to these scam stoppers, and you engage the consumers the most vulnerable. It's going to be missed. Very much appreciated, and I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other board member care to comment? See none. With that, Shelley, is there any public comment for this agenda item?
I see none at this time.
Thank you. Next, we begin the executive update. We start with agenda item D1, the review of the September 9th, 2020 board meeting minutes, followed by the review of the November 4th, 2020 committee meeting minutes.
Chair, I move for to approve.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll make a
Second.
second.
Okay, is there any board member comment? Shelley, any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Okay, please, roll call, please.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Ronnie Cobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzilla,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
I will abstain. I wasn't a board member, but I did read the minutes.
okay. Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. Next is the November 4th, 2020 Executive Licensing, Legislative, Enforcement, and Public Affairs Committee Summary Reports, which begin on page 27 of your board packet.
Chair,
Board
motion to
members.
approve.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Jimmy Wayne, second.
Okay. Is there any board comment? Okay, seeing none. Shelley, is there any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Felice, roll call, please.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Ronnie Cobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzilla,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Yes.
Marla Richardson,
Yes.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. Next is agenda item D2, the Registrar's Report. For this, I turn it over to David Folt. Mr. Folt, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Delatorre. In regards to the board meeting schedule, we are going to survey all of you regarding your availability for a board meeting around the middle of March. There may be a need to have committee meetings, but we will leave that up to the committee chairs to let us know if they need to meet before the March board meeting. So I don't know if there's any questions regarding the board meeting schedule. If not, I'd like to, sorry.
Board members, are there any comments? Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to provide an update on the contracting of a consultant to study the battery energy storage system classification. And you'll find the update on page, it begins on page 59 of your packet. As we've previously reported, the Department of Consumer Affairs issued an intent to award the contract to the University of Berkeley, and that occurred back in September. The University of Berkeley reviewed our study that's on our website, and as many of you know, it's an 84-page study with over 1,000 pages of documentation and background information. And because there's a lot to review, they need to review the study that we did as well as interview other stakeholders. They've asked for 6 months to complete their study. Initially, we had advised you that 4 months we thought would be sufficient, but they have asked for 6 months. We've approved that. We anticipate they're going to begin in January of 2021. Now, as I think you're aware, this study is of interest to a lot of different parties, and we are routinely asked questions about what could happen. And that's why we included in the packet a timeline for the regulatory rulemaking process. And I want to just touch on that for just a moment. We have no idea what UC Berkeley will recommend. They may recommend that rulemaking be pursued to enact a new regulation or to amend a regulation, but we don't know that. There's lots of other recommendations that they could bring forward. So I just want to be clear that in no way are we trying to, as staff, influence what they may recommend. And when they do make a recommendation, you as board members have the final authority to decide whether you want to adopt their regulation or you want to pursue some other type of remedy, or perhaps the current way we're allowing classifications to perform this work should continue. But that will be ultimately your decision. We have a timeline, and I did speak with Jason Hurtado. As you know, he's your board counsel. I spoke with Jason this morning, and he expressed some concern that the timeline is too lengthy. You would have this process taking perhaps 3 years. Jason mentioned that it should the regulatory rulemaking process be something that the board would want to do, it could be completed within 1.5 years to 2 years. But again, this was included only for informational purposes. What we're planning to do is to let UC Berkeley perform their study. I have asked that the Department of Consumer Affairs provide the standard methodology that's used in preparing these reports. And from the staff perspective here at the CSLB, we're going to provide any support information that UC Berkeley requests, but it's going to be, their study, and they're going to be performing that independent of CSLB staff. So I don't know if there's any questions about that, but I just wanted to clarify that you as board members have the authority to decide what, if anything, you want to do in regards to the appropriate classification to install a battery energy storage system. I welcome any questions or comments.
Board members, are there any comments? Okay, seeing none. Is that it for your report, Dave?
Yes, that would be my report.
Thank you for that. Shelley, are there any public comments out there?
We only have one question. One attendee is asking if the tentative board meeting schedule is in the meeting packet.
No, it is not, because we have not surveyed our board members regarding their availability for March. But as soon as I would ask that Felice Jones would survey the board members next week, and at that time we'll be able to publicly put on our website the date for the next board meeting.
And that was all the questions we had at this time.
Great, thank you, Shelley. So the registrar's report was informational only. There was no action required on that. Next is the agenda item D3, the review of the board member administrative procedural manual. You can find the manual beginning on page 67 of your packet. Proposed revisions are noted as underlined to incorporate new language and as a strikeout to remove language. The proposed edits are intended to provide clarity on current board policy. Since the executive committee reviewed the manual on the November 4th, 2020 committee meeting, there were a few additional minor edits made, which I will cover. The reference to an enforcement representative has been replaced with the current classification title, which is Special Investigator. The other edit is the acronym for California Department of Insurance, which has been changed to CDI. I wanted to briefly address one proposed revision on the top of page 93, which is contact with parties to a complaint or investigation. It is our current practice that Registrar folk take the lead to respond and address these matters. The goal is to respond within 24 hours of receipt of any inquiry or request sent to board members. Registrar folk and Chief Deputy Registrar Corcoran will confirm A response is provided on board members' behalf and provide a copy of any correspondence received and addressed to board members along with a copy of the response. Board members, do you have any comments at this time?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Again, I ask, is there any final comments by the board?
I just have a comment as a new member of this board. This procedures has been very, very helpful to me, the 2018 version, and moving forward, the changes look correct.
Okay, can you speak up closer to the speaker? We can barely hear you, or at least I can. So,
is that better? This is Michael Mark that made that comment.
Okay, thank you for your comment. All right. Okay, Shelley, any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Elise, roll call, please.
David Delatore,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Rodney Gobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Yes.
Marla Richardson,
Yes.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson, Johnny,
Aye. Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. Moving on to agenda item D4, the budget update, which begins on page 101. Stacy Paul, Budget Manager, will provide the board an overview of our current budget, including revenue and expenditures. As we have discussed at prior board meetings, the board approved reduction plan of $7.1 million remains critical in keeping our fund solvent this fiscal year. Stacy, please provide the board an update.
Thank you, Board Chair, and good morning, everyone. On page 101, begins your budget update. The first chart shows the fiscal year 2021 budget and expenses for the first quarter. No big surprises. In fact, we're cutting costs, as David mentioned, whenever possible to meet our goal of reducing the expenses that were approved by the board. As you can see, we've expended roughly 24% of our budget authority, keeping us on track to spend about the same as we spent last year at $66 million on board expenses. If we flip the page, the first chart shows our revenue for the first quarter. You can see that overall, we are up from prior year by 16.8%. This is mostly due to the emergency fee increase of $50 on the renewals that was implemented back in February 2020. The next chart directly below is our fund condition. This projects out to 21-22. If you look at current year, which is the middle column, you can see that we had a beginning balance of $3.8 million. Our projected revenue for this year is $72 million, and directly below that is our projected expenses and mandatory costs at $72 million, which accounts for the $7.1 million reduction that we already spoke about. This should end the fiscal year exactly how we started, at around $3.8 million, keeping our fund flat. In the same chart, if you look at the final column, projected budget year 21-22, you can see a similar scenario to this year. However, it doesn't account for the $7.1 million in expenses or a possible fee increase. This really highlights if nothing is done to our fund, it will be depleted to basically zero, leaving us insolvent starting in fiscal year 22-23. Moving on to page 103, this is our Construction Management Education Fund, where we issue $100,000 in grants annually to schools. As you can see, we've been seeing a steady increase in donations being made to this account. If this trend continues, this fund should be able to continue dispersing grants for many years. If you flip to the next page, the board's approved $7.1 million in expenditure reductions for this fiscal year that I referred to in the previous charts. The column on the right shows in blue reflects the savings in each area that have been identified in the first quarter. As you can see, overall, we have saved $2.5 million already this year. And if we stay on track, we'll definitely meet the 7.1 goal and possibly exceed it. Lastly, let me quickly touch on the statistical summary details on the next 2 pages. As you can see, over the last 4 months, we are seeing a decline in new licenses and applications. This is mainly due to the pandemic and the shutdown of exam administration over at least a few months. During this time, renewals have stayed steady though and consistent, and in fact, we are seeing an 8% increase over 2 years ago. This concludes the budget update. Are there any questions?
Any board comments, questions? Okay,
This is-
seeing.
This is, this is Susan, and I wanted to add, thank you very much, Stacy, since we've been working on this, and it is linked to the next subject we'll be going over. So thank you for that background for the next presentation.
No problem. Thank you, Susan.
Okay, Susan, thank you for that comment. Any public comment? Shelley?
This is the moderator. We did receive a request for comment from Gilbert Collins. He's asking if there is a listing of the grants to schools.
Our licensing, this is processed under our licensing section, but we can Justin, I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, I'll find the page number real fast.
Okay, thanks.
My apologies, everyone. One moment. You can see the proposed awards the board will be considering later today on page 290. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Justin.
Well, thank you for the report, Stacy. And that was informational, no actions required. Moving on, agenda item D5, the presentation from Cooperative Personnel Services, HR Consulting, or CPS, on their fee audit study. The update and summary begins on page 109 of your packet and is followed by the study. The study lays out the recommendations to maintain sufficient funding over the next 5 years. Before we begin the presentation, I want to provide a bit of a background. Over the past year and a half, we have been discussing at every board meeting our budget and the need for long-term solutions to balance expenditures with revenue. On September 2019, the board approved seeking emergency regulations to raise renewal fees and directed staff to hire a consultant to complete a comprehensive fee study with recommendations for long-term financial stability. On December of 2019, the board received approval by the Office of Administrative Law to raise renewal fees under existing statutory authority by $50. We began collecting the fees effective February 2020. On September 9th, 2020, the board took additional measures to reduce expenditures and approved a $7.1 million expenditure reduction plan so we could remain solvent through the remainder of this fiscal year. At this time, the board will need to either consider increasing fees or make sufficient permanent cuts to our expenditures. CPS HR Consulting is here today to share their comprehensive plan, which takes into account the mitigating steps the board has taken to date and provides recommendations for long-term fund stability. As board chair, I appointed Vice Chair Susan Granzella and Board Secretary Mary Teichert as a two-person advisory committee to review the fee study. On October 16, 2020, Susan and Mary met with CPS representative and CSLB staff to review and discuss the study. At the November 4th, 2020 committee meeting, Susan and Mary provided an overview to the executive committee. The executive committee recommended CPS represent the study to the full board today. I appreciate the work Mary and Susan and staff have done. I will now turn it over to Chris Atkinson, Senior Consultant with CPS HR Consulting, to present the study and recommendations to the board. Chris, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, David. Happy to be here with everyone this morning. My name is Chris Atkinson. I was the project manager for this engagement. I'll just start with a couple quick introductions. I have myself on the line and then also Paula North. My background's in workload studies, fee studies. We've done a couple similar studies to this study with other boards at DCA. And so I'd also like to introduce Paula, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Paula North, and I've been with CPS HR for about 12 years, working on organizational assessments, including a number of these fee studies, as Chris mentioned. And my primary role in this one was data compilation and analysis. And we just want to thank you for your time this morning as we present our results.
All right, thanks, Paula. So just a quick 2 seconds on CPS HR Consulting. We're an HR consulting and management firm. We're a joint powers government authority. We only work with government and nonprofit agencies. We've been in business since 1985, and we focus on a variety of different HR and management related topics. So in terms of what we'll be discussing today, I'll give you a little bit of background of the objectives and the background of the study. We'll dive into a little bit of the story in terms of historical revenue and expenses, as well as projections into the future. Then we'll talk a little bit about the mechanics in terms of how did we actually arrive at these recommended fee amounts. We'll then just briefly review the recommended fee levels that were in the agenda packet. And then we'll talk about the overall impact of these recommended fee levels on the fund condition for CSLB. Next slide, please. Great. So despite fee increases in 2011, 2017, and 2019, most recently, CSLB's fund has been still maintained a structural imbalance since FY 13-14. So where expenditures have exceeded revenue since that time, essentially. We'll talk a little bit about why. The majority of these increases really are primarily outside of the CSLB's control, and we'll dive into a little bit of the reasons behind that, like I mentioned. So recently, the CSLB contracted with us to really look at their overall fee structure and determine a fair and justified ways for charging applicants different fee amounts based really on the workload associated with performing those fees to where the fund would maintain a healthy balance for the next 3 to 5 years. Next slide. Great. So, and just a caveat too, the next couple slides I'm going to be going over in terms of the financials were a snapshot in time as of June 2020. Later in the presentation, in terms of what we actually costed the fees on, in terms of the recommended fee levels, was based upon updated financial projections as of September 2020. The story in terms of historical and projections is relatively similar between these 2 points in time. So this graph really looks at what the historical expenses and revenues were, as well as projecting into the future here. So the top line there is expenditures in the past and going into the future. So if we look at that burgundy line there, and this is in thousands of dollars, so that first line in FY 13-14 is 57.6 million, increased gradually to in 1920, 72.8 million. And will continue to increase to 90 million in FY 25-26 if a fee increase is not instituted. And looking at that time period between FY 2021 to 25-26 is about a 24% increase annualized compared to the revenues from projecting into the future at FY 19-20 at 69 million to 74 million. Is only about a 7% increase. So expenditures are almost outpacing revenues into the future at about a 3-to-1 rate. So there's definitely a clear need there for a fee increase overall. Next slide, please. So this slide looks at a little bit more granular level, the expenditures for the board from FY 16-17 all the way to FY 25-26 across the board's 4 main budget categories. So starting at the top there, that burgundy line, personnel services, is expenses related to employee salary and benefits. In FY 16-17 was 34 million. It's grown to just shy of 45 million in 2021. That cost will continue to increase, annualized about 3% every year, all the way out to 25-26 to end at 52 million projected. Again, if no fee increase is instituted. Going down to the next line in green there, the total operating equipment and expenditures that aren't enforcement related actually saw a slight decline from FY 16-17 to 2021, ending at 18.3 million. That cost is projected to increase to 19.3 million in FY 25-26, which is about a 1% annualized rate. The next goldenrod line there is total external enforcements. So this line has to do with external costs such as Attorney General's Office, Office of Administrative Hearings. These are the 2 biggest line items in that category. In FY 16-17 was 6.6 million to 2021 grew to 11 million, and that will continue to increase to FY 25-26 of 14 million. And that's about a 5% annualized year-over-year increase out to 25-26. And then the last item down there has to do with direct assessments. So this is primarily the board's payment into the statewide pro rata expenses for centralized services like the Department of Finance, CalHR, et cetera. That has gone from 3 million in 16-17 to 5.5 million in 2021, and is relatively flatlined into the future there to 25-26. And a lot of the reasons really behind these increases that are outside of CSLB's control have to do with salary increases. So for personnel services there, that's primarily related to increases in salary and benefits associated with those employees. For total enforcement expenses there in that goldenrod line, that has to do with increased in salaries for these individuals in the Attorney General's and Office of Administrative Hearings. That cost then gets passed down back to the board. So that's a lot of in terms of just the big picture, what's really happening here. Next slide, please. So this slide, what I really want to draw your attention to, a lot of this information I've reviewed in the last couple slides, but most importantly, kind of from a bottom line standpoint, if you take a look at the bottom 2 rows there, the fund balance in the month in reserve, what you will notice, again, this is without a fee increase, is that as of June 2020, the board would have achieved a negative fund balance beginning in 2021, and that would have basically continued all the way into the future there. So starting at 0.1 negative months in reserves and just continuing to grow. So just another snapshot in terms of why a fee increase is needed. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'm going to get a little bit into the mechanics of how we arrived at the recommended fee amounts. So step 1 there, the funding gap analysis had to do with identifying the total needed revenue to offset the expenses as well as build a healthy 4 to 5 month reserve. So in that 4 to 5 month number comes from the fact that there's a legal maximum of a 6 month reserve that the board can have in statute. And so in working with CSLB staff, we felt that a 4 to 5 month reserve would be a healthy amount of money to maintain the financial stability of the fund there. So that's what we were really targeting at in terms of identifying the amount of fee increase that was needed there. So then step 2, work time allocation analysis. So this step has to do with tying the work of the staff at the Contractor State License Board to the fee amounts. And so really this was a time study that was trying to capture the amount of time associated with different fee types. So the first piece in that was development of a standardized task list where we captured work activities from licensing, enforcement, and exams, created a large list of different tasks that would capture that entire unit. So just as a quick example, One task was around original contractor's application. So we captured in several sentences the work that licensing performs to process that original contractor's application. There were other tasks around enforcement, such as for complaints. So it described all the work activity associated with performing complaints for the enforcement unit. We also made sure to incorporate the administrative time. So individuals that were not working directly in licensing enforcement and testing, their time was captured and redistributed as well into this study, but they weren't technically part of logging their time in this study. So what we did then when we had all the licensing enforcement and exam tasks is we had the frontline level supervisors complete the percentage of time each of their staff members spends on average across a year in each of these task categories. We then went through a review process where the second level manager reviewed that time allocation, and then finally a third level review where the division chiefs signed off, made any modifications as necessary. So the next piece of this was looking at workload quantification. And so there we're really talking about, as they're often referred to at your board meetings, just the workload statistics. So number of original contractor applications, number of complaints, et cetera. And that was an important input into this methodology because we used the work allocation data that I described along with these workload outputs to also help arrive at an estimated time per task. And I'll jump into an example about what that is in the next slide, please. Great. So one of the key aims with this study, and as you'll see in the revised fee structure here, was really to get an understanding of how much time is spent on activities associated with what we call sole owner versus non-sole owner license types, and to justify different fee amounts for those two business entity types. So I'll just quickly define sole versus non-sole owner. So sole owner are contractors that are your typical sole proprietorship, individual business owner. Contrast that with the non-sole owner business entity types, which is basically everything except the sole owner. So joint ventures, partnerships, LLCs, et cetera, basically. And so what this table looks at is just a snapshot of how some of these, how it takes essentially longer to process sole owner activities, non-sole owner activities compared to sole owner activities. So as an example, if you look on the left-hand side of this table under the initial contractor's license task, allocated PY here for sole owners, 8.2 PY. So PY here stands for personnel years, which is a measure of the amount of hours associated with a given headcount at the board. So DCA uses 776 hours to equal one full-time individual. So that removes time for vacation, leave, et cetera. So that 8.2 is the total out of everyone that was associated with the study in the Contractor State License Board, all employees. We're saying 8.2 full-time staff equivalent were associated with working on initial contractors' licenses. Next column over, equivalent annual hours, 14,563, again, for the sole owners. That's the same thing as the 8.2 PY. The next column over, FY 1819 workload count. So for sole owners, that's 10,425 initial contractors license applications processed. And what we did in the column on the far right, estimated average processing time, is we simply just took that equivalent annual hours divided by the workload count to arrive at an estimated time there. So for sole owners, 1.4 hours. For the non-sole owner initial contractor's license, 1.9 hours. So the differences primarily in terms of additional processing time come down to the fact that there's more individuals associated with a non-sole owner license type compared to a sole owner license type. So specifically for that initial contractor's licenses, the staff is doing things like doing multiple background checks on individuals for the non-sole licenses, checking employee-specific bond requirements for multiple individuals, things of that nature. You go down to the next section there for the active timely renewal biannual contractors. You'll see that the sole owners take 2.8 minutes on average compared to the non-sole owners. That's 4.1 minutes. Again, for the similar reasons in terms of additional people needing to be verified. The last task there, enforcement actions. For this particular table, what we did is we consolidated all of the enforcement metrics, including accusations, investigations, complaints, etc., into an overall metric. And if you're looking here on the very right-hand side, you're able to see that on average, these enforcement actions in the aggregate for sole owners take 14.6 hours compared to non-sole owners at 29.5 hours, which is so almost actually slightly more than double the amount of time. And here it's related to contacting additional people for non-sole owner business entity types for interviews, communications with any type of enforcement issue. So there's a substantial amount of time difference, and that was kind of the foundation in terms of why you'll see later we're recommending higher fees for that business entity type. Next slide, please. Great. So the next step in the fee costing methodology was we identified by each of those 4 primary budget categories that we talked about with the line graphs earlier, the amount of revenue needed to offset those expenses, as well as build a 4 to 5 month healthy reserve overall. And then once we identified that needed revenue, we took the time data from the work allocation study I was discussing, and then used that information to distribute the needed revenue for each of the fees. Then we took historical workload averages. So the workload output metrics I was talking about, initial contractors licenses, renewals, etc. And then we divided them by those metrics to arrive at an initial fee amount. So just as a really simple example, if there was a needed revenue for a fee type for, let's say, $100,000, and we had 1,000 application types, you would then end up with $100 as an initial fee, for instance. What we then did was we made slight adjustments where it was necessary in working with CSLB staff to make sure that the fee amounts were still even and fair to the licensee population based on industry best practices, and then with rounding as well. Next slide, please. Great. So here's a look at slide 1 of 2 of the recommended fee tables. What we did is we broke up the fee types into 3 different categories: new application, license maintenance, and then renewals. Renewals is on the next page. So just to kind of explain this table for a moment, the left-hand column is the specific fees, and then across the right-hand columns is different fee amounts, and I'll talk about each one of these individually. So the current regulatory fee is, if you are a contractor, what you would be paying to the board today for any renewal, licensing fees, et cetera. That's current regulatory fee. Current statutory maximum is the ability that the CSLB would have today if they wanted to raise their fees through a regulatory process. We're pursuing with this fee study an increase in the overall legislative amount. So note that. Third column, revised regulatory fees. This is the fee amount that we would be recommending be instituted in statute with the result of this study. And then that last column over there, revised statutory maximum, is the ceiling we are recommended that CSLB be given to increase their fees through a regulatory process if needed to in the future, especially if expenditures are more than anticipated or revenues are less than anticipated. We wanted that 25% buffer in there to allow the board more flexibility in terms of raising fees on a quicker timetable if needed. So that's the rationale behind that 25% revised statutory maximum. A couple things I'll note here, and you'll see this theme basically on the renewals too, is that for the most part, we've kept the initial contractors related fees the same while increasing the non-sole owner fees. So if you take a look at the second row there, initial contractor's license fee for the sole owner, current regulatory fee reads $200, revised regulatory fee reads $200. So we're recommending that stay the same, particularly with the fact that their fees were just increased recently through that emergency regulation. Go down to the next line, initial contractor's license fee. Current regulatory fee is $200 right now. We're recommending that be raised to $350. So next slide. Great, renewal fees, okay. So a lot of fees on this slide. Everything all here minus the bottom 2 rows has to do with sole and non-sole owner renewal type of fees. The bottom 2 rows are for the home improvement salespeople. So again, here, the non-sole owner fees have increased across the board compared to the sole owner fees have maintained the same amount with the exception of the 4-year timely inactive. We recommended that for the sole owners, that increased from 225 to 300. Otherwise, it's the same fee level for the sole owners there. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a high-level look at the total revenue currently received by each of these 3 categories, as well as the additional revenue projected, assuming the recommended fees are instituted. So on the left column there, we break it down by new applications, license maintenance, renewals. You look at, and this is an annualized figure here, revenue with current fees. So currently for new applications, the board's collecting 12.9 million. License maintenance is 1.2 million, and the biggest chunk is 55.2 million for renewals. So in total, 69.4 million. If you look at then the last column here with the recommended fee levels, what that would result in on an annualized basis is 5.7 for new applications, 2.2 for license maintenance, and then renewals having the biggest increase there at 13.2 million. So on average, projected $21.2 million in additional revenue. And then the bottom section of this table looks at the bottom line impact of the months in reserves impact of that additional revenue. So looking at the bottom, we then look at by each fiscal year beginning in 21-22, and this assumes, as I'll talk about a little bit in the next slide, a fee increase as of July 2021. In FY 21-22, without a fee increase, you'd have a negative 1.4 million months in reserve estimation, going all the way down to a negative 8.4 in 25-26. Contrast that with if the new fees were recommended, the projections would indicate that in 21-22, the board would achieve a 2.8 months in reserves, and that months in reserve essentially gradually builds over time. So we were careful in identifying the recommended fee amounts that we didn't get the board too much revenue too soon, or the opposite. So these fee levels were designed to have a kind of a gradual buildup of the reserve without exceeding that 6 months that is in statute maximum. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide is kind of just a different way of displaying some of the revenue that I was talking about on the previous slide, and keeps the expenditure projections that we had originally had, with the exception of some adjustments that were made that Stacy highlighted just a moment ago. If you look at budgetary adjustments there, that 7.1 million in FY 2021 reduction in expenditures. So that information was incorporated in our final fee costing to arrive at the recommended fees, as was in FY 21-22, that 4.2 million reduction in expenditures having to do with employee salaries was also incorporated in this final analysis. And so then again, as you can see, the months in reserve there at the bottom line, same as the last chart, essentially, the board would see a gradual increase in their fund over time, all the way through 25-26. So, and that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, David, I can't hear you. You on mute?
You were right. Thank you. I want to thank Paula and Chris for that presentation. I asked if there was any board comment. And seeing none.
Wait. Oh,
Is there?
there we go. Yes.
Susan.
Chris, yes. Well, obviously, I always have questions. But Chris, can you elaborate on some anticipated and discussed revenue that was not included in your projection? I mean, it's sort of a good news, what we anticipated from the homeowner fees once implemented and some other things that you did mention in your report. It is not included in your forecast, but nevertheless, if implemented, those two items would substantially help the budget.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, we definitely talked about that report. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but yeah, it was several millions of dollars that would, like you mentioned, be, as additional revenue to the board that wasn't included. And the distinction we made in terms of why we decided to include these reductions in expenditures like that 7.1 and that 4.2 million was because they were already, approved and codified. It was within the control of the board to make these estimations, whereas the revenue numbers are still projections that are a little bit less unknown. And so we decided to not include these. But yeah, if they come through, obviously the board would achieve a likely higher fund balance.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain the motion to approve the CPS fee audit study.
I so move.
Is
I
there a
second.
Or would you want me to read the staff recommendation to codify it?
Please do.
Yes.
So the motion is to increase the statutory minimum and maximum ranges for the fees in the CSLB's fee statute by approximately 25%, according to the schedule recommended by the fee study consultant. I think that's what it is.
That's correct.
So you heard the motion. Is there's been a motion and a second. Any questions from the board? Any comment from public comment?
I have one more comment. And this is a question to Dave, really. Once this is approved, there are certain steps that we will need to take as a board to get this in place. Is it appropriate at this time for you to have Chief Jay describe that?
Yes, thank you, Susan. Mike Chemnetsky is prepared to kind of walk the board through the timeline and the possible legislative proposal. We were going to take that separate, though, from approving the board, the report itself. But if you'd like Mike to comment on it now, that would be fine.
I think it would be cleaner to pass the motion and then let's talk about it under ledge, because it's going to be a legislative deal we got to do, right?
It is, but the reason I bring it up is that implementing this, we can say, yes, we'll be on the right path, but it is by no means an easy path for us to take to get this in, to get this verified, to get it into regulation. So it is a part of the process, but I agree. Let's go ahead and vote on the motion, and then perhaps we can get a brief description of what the process is after this, because it's big.
Yeah, just to add to that, though, on page 171, it's immediately following the study itself. The thought was for Mike to again walk the board through the process, and also the ledge proposal would be something that he's prepared to discuss. After you vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? With that, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. I asked for board comment. There was. Shelley, any public comment?
We do. We have a comment from Gilbert Collins. His comment is, would the board consider a give or take stipend from both non-enforcement and external enforcement budgets that would also increase along with the 0.05% increase annually for grants to schools and local communities work development boards?
I think that's outside of the scope of the current motion.
Okay. And with that, we have no additional questions or comments.
Thank you, Shelley. Okay. Felice, roll call, please.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Ronnie Cobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Yes.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Felice. Okay, moving on. Page 171 is a legislative proposal to increase the statutory fee amounts as recommended in the CPS fee study. If approved, this will provide staff the authority to seek and author to raise the fees. Mike Jemensky, would you briefly walk us through the timeline should the board approve the legislative proposal today?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Yes, on page 171 is the one-page proposal, and on page 172 is the statutory language that takes the consultant's chart, the recommended chart for recommended fee levels, which is on page 153. We're taking that chart and we're plugging it right into existing statutory language. And you can follow the chart really quite easily by taking a look at the red and blue statutory language on pages 172 and 173. But this is just to say that this proposal, if the board approves it, it will implement the recommended fee levels, and then it will be the CSLB Legislative Division's job to get this into a legislative measure. We're going to know soon here in a couple of weeks whether that will be in a policy bill, which is normally the kind of bills that CSLB advances after board approval, or if it will be in a budget trailer bill, which would be kind of a first for CSLB staff as far as a fee bill. We're going to work with the administration who's going to take the lead on that, whether that decision is made. Basically, it's been a unique year because of COVID. So we're going to get a cue from leadership and DCA as to whether we're going to try to do this in a policy bill or a budget trailer bill. The difference in timeline, the policy bill, if we were to obtain an author at the end of this year in early January, it would go through both houses of the legislature and hopefully wind up before the governor in September. If it's signed, it would be effective in January 2022 and go into effect on our March 2022 renewals. So policy bill, March 2022 renewals. Budget trailer bill, a little bit different. The governor, as you all know, the governor must submit a balanced budget by January 10th. Throughout January and February, budget committee chairs in each house introduce the governor's proposal in bill form. The next few months, the budget committees get to work. Legislature must pass the budget by June 15th, and the governor has 12 days to sign it. So if CSLB can get into a budget trailer bill in that period, we would be looking at summer effectiveness, and that would in theory be
Chief Jay,
September. Yes.
Can we just ask the moderator to mute everybody else's microphones, please? That would be very nice. Thank you.
I thought there was a small child in my office.
Proceed. Yeah.
And so if we get into a trailer bill, we're looking at approval by the end of summer with the governor's budget, by July 1st, and then September 2021 renewals. So that's the breakdown. Again, policy bill, January 2022 effective date for the March 2022 renewals. Trailer bill, July 2021 effective date, September 2021 renewals. And you will know when we know which mechanism we're going through. And then let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. As a reminder to the board, if you are not commenting, kindly place yourself on mute as to not disrupt the person making comments. With that, is there any discussion from the board? This is where you can unmute yourself. None? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the legislative proposal to increase statutory fee amounts as presented by the CPS-HR and authorize staff to seek an author.
I'll make the motion to approve. This is Diana.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Mary.
So it's been moved and second. Any additional comments from the board? Shelley, any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Elise, roll call, please.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Aggie Beltran,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Grandella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer, Nancy,
Yes. Sorry about that.
Mary Taggart,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you, Felice. So now moving on to agenda item D6 on page 179 is the administration update. I will now turn it over to Chief Administration Mike Meliza to provide an update.
Thank you, Chair Delatorre, and good morning, members of the board. The Administrative Division update begins on page 179 of your board pack, and I will begin with the Personnel Unit update. So I'll start with transactions. So during the first quarter of fiscal year 2021, that's July through September, CSLB personnel staff completed 145 personnel transactions. This included the addition of 4 new employees from other state agencies, 1 employee new to state service, and within CSLB, 119 employees were promoted and 17 transferred to different units. In addition, 4 employees accepted training and development assignments. The charts on page 179 show the total number of personnel transactions per quarter for this fiscal year in comparison to the previous fiscal year. So most of these transactions are a result of the transition to the Special Investigator series in our enforcement division. That's highlighted on page 180. So personnel unit staff worked diligently in July and August of 2020 to process the transitions of positions from the enforcement representative series to the Special Investigator series and Investigator series. The more broadly known and used Special Investigator classifications has allowed CSLB to effectively compete with other state agencies for the most suitable and qualified candidates to fill our enforcement division vacancies. We'll go back to the top of page 180 and look at our vacancies. So during the first quarter of fiscal year 2021, CSLB averaged 48 vacancies. The personnel unit continuously works with CSLB hiring managers and the Department of Consumer Affairs to identify and minimize any delays in recruitment for these key positions. Go to page 181. Your board pack reflects a list of examinations administered by DCA for the classifications we use here at CSLB. The majority of these exams are done online through the CalHR website. I'll now direct you to page 182 for the Business Services Unit update. I will begin with our facilities. One highlight is our Valencia office. CSLB, Department of Consumer Affairs, and Department of General Services identified a new location for our Valencia office. The CSLB approved the new location, the IT specifications, the modular furniture layout plan, and the floor plan, and construction in the new suite began June of 2020. Delivery and installation of modular furniture was installed in October of this year, and I'm pleased to report that we should be completing this project this month. We'll have our staff move over to the new building on December 18th. A list of contracts and procurements is listed on page 182. In light of the budget constraints, all purchases continue to be carefully assessed and only mission critical items are processed. However, we do deem personal protective equipment as mission critical items, and the following COVID related items have been purchased. In past reports, I've noted that we've always had masks. We've purchased masks, gloves, and sanitizers, but in this report, we've purchased plexiglass sneeze guards that were installed on employees' cubicles at CSLB's headquarters to ensure proper social distancing. And then we also purchased freestanding hand sanitizer stations that were installed in high traffic areas here at the headquarters building as well. So that concludes my update for the administrative division. I'll gladly answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you for that update, Mike. Any board comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Is there any public comment?
None at this time.
Okay, so that was informational and no actions required from the board at this time. Moving on to agenda item D7 on page 187 is the information technology update. I will now turn it over to Chief of IT, Jason Perez, to provide an update. Jason.
Thank you, Board Chair, and good morning, everyone. On page 187 begins the information technology update. And I would like to highlight a couple of items, and the first one being the online renewal. The online renewal continues to its success, where CSLB is able to process approximately 4,500 transactions monthly. Additionally, the IT division is in the initial phase of evaluating the policy change to signature requirements for license renewal applications, specifically requiring only the qualifiers to sign the renewal application. The IT division reviewed our licensee data, and with additional modifications to our licensing application, CSLB will be able to completely process online renewals for partnerships, corporations, limited liability companies, and joint ventures when they only have one qualifier. During this initial data review, it appears we will be able to offer the online renewal process for up to 98% of our total licensing population. The IT division will plan this enhancement effort along with the currently planned IT projects scheduled for 2021. Continuing to page 190 to highlight the current and future projects. By the end of this month, IT division is planning to release online payment for citations. And then on January 1st, IT division will have completed the system coding to allow for retroactive online renewals. The scheduled 2021 projects are the online original application and the testing administration to our third-party vendor. And as I mentioned earlier, we also plan to add the single qualifier renewal enhancement to our 2021 modernization efforts. This concludes the information technology update. I'm available if the board has any questions.
Thank you for that update, Jason. Board members, any discussion, any comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Any public comment?
None at this time.
Okay, that was also informational and no action is required. Moving on to agenda item D8 on page 191. The strategic plan objectives. The objectives and status of each were covered in detail at the November 4th, 2020 committee meetings. There are no proposed changes to target dates at this time for the board to consider. The division chiefs are available should the board have any questions. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Shelley, any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item E, enforcement. For that, we turn to our enforcement committee, Chair Kevin Albanese, and enforcement chief, Missy Vickery. The floor is yours, Kevin.
All right, thank you so much. And I had, give me 1 second here. Sorry about that, David. My thing got, there it is. All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair De La Torre. The enforcement program update is going to begin on page 215 of your packet, and we start with a vacancy update and summary of the implementation of the expense reduction strategies. As reported in the board packet, 15 enforcement staff are currently redirected to assist counties with COVID-19 contact tracing. Last week, we were advised that the redirection of CSLB staff will likely continue until June of 2021. Taking into consideration the 24 enforcement vacancies, redirection of staff to contact tracing, and other staff on reduced schedule to assist with their children with distance learning, 45 enforcement positions are not available to assist with CSLB related work. Fortunately, And this goes back to the earlier part of the meeting with Amanda, and earlier as discussed in the budget, the special investigator classification conversion from enforcement rep has proved beneficial in recruitment efforts. It is now common to receive over 100 applications per special investigator vacancy. These applicants are highly qualified with extensive investigative experience. In the middle of page 215, you can see a status update of the expense reduction strategies that were approved at the June 5th, 2024 meeting. This information is based upon billings between July 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2020. AG expenses are currently averaging $598,000 per month, with the goal being to get that to $580,000. Arbitration billings are currently averaging $55,000 a month, with the goal being to $45,000. And additionally, the goal is to keep industry expert expenses at less than $50,000 a month, and currently those are averaging $20,000. Reducing costs by $7 million while still meeting enforcement expectations is a challenge, but staff have implemented several strategies to achieve these cost reductions and improve legal action effectiveness, including increasing the utilization of the letters of admonishment for less serious and standalone offenses that really do not include a financial injury. Issuing these LOAs allows CSLB to hold informal office conferences with licensees to address their appeal of the LOA, rather than incurring costs of the AG representation for a formal citation and possible appeal hearing before an administrative law judge. Additionally, enforcement staff was authorized at the June board meeting to refer consumers to small claims court and the licensed surety bond when the licensee does not have a history of repeated offenses and the estimated financial injury is less than $10,000. The process was implemented on August 1st, and as of that date, 125 complaints have been forwarded to the ADR process change. Enforcement staff continue to make every effort to settle or resolve licensee complaints before referring the matter to the small claims court and/or the bond. At the November 10th, 2020 meeting, November 10th, 2020 committee meeting, board member Nancy Springer requested an update regarding the complaint prioritization statistics. Consumer complaints were received, closed, and referred to field investigation in September 2020 were reviewed. During this time, the intake and mediation centers in Sacramento and Norwalk received approximately 1,000 consumer filed complaints. The IMCs also closed 607 licensee complaints, with 166 of those complaints settled, resulting in over $2 million restitution awarded to financially injured persons. Following the analysis of 273 complaints referred for field investigation in September 2020, this confirmed that enforcement staff are appropriately using the prioritization guidelines as listed on page 217 to ensure consumer safety. The urgent priority includes elder abuse, grand theft, health and safety code violations, and diversion of funds. In the urgent priority complaints, there were 17 of them meeting those criteria, and they were referred to field investigation with possible egregious criminal violations and were assigned primarily to CSLB peace officers. Health and safety code violations are generally assigned to an investigation center special investigator that has developed a local relationship with the local building department. 26 of those complaints reviewed alleged high priority relating to fraud or misrepresentation, aiding and abetting, workers' compensation insurance violations, and repeat violators. Those were referred to investigation centers and typically assigned to more experienced special investigators. There were also 221 routine priority complaints that related to unlicensed activity, poor workmanship, abandonment, permit violations, and they were also referred to a field investigation. Finally, there were 9 low priority complaints that included standalone contract violation, advertising violations, failing to display license number, and those were referred for investigation. In keeping with CSLB's all hands on deck approach, some of those cases are being handled by executive office analytical staff. I also want to provide an update on the handling of permit-related complaints. Permit violations may fall within the urgent priority if there is a health and safety issue or routine priority if there are less than serious violations. The permit violations that fall into the routine category are often handled by the issuance of a letter of admonishment accompanied by a corrective action plan that would also require the licensee to complete the online permit compliance training video and rectify the permit violation with the appropriate building department. Again, this would not preclude the complaint from being elevated to an urgent category that may result in a more formal disciplinary action if there were health and safety components. As previously mentioned, enforcement staff began using the permit violation training video in conjunction with the corrective action plan on July 1st to further educate the contractors of the importance of following permit requirements set forth in the local building departments. To date, we have issued 18 letters of admonishment that include the correction action plan to watch the permit video. Of those 18, 4 have complied, 10 are pending compliance, and 4 did not comply, and that case has been returned to the investigative center for issuance of a citation. There's one investigative highlight that I'd like to bring to your attention, which is on page 219. You can find the summary of CSLB's investigation into a licensee who was found to be renting out his license number to an unlicensed contractor for $1,250 and 30% of the project's profits. And the unlicensed contractor's project on a home in Oakland, California was halted when the City of Oakland's planning department noticed several permit violations. But this didn't happen until after the homeowner had already paid almost $35,000 towards the almost $62,000 contract. An accusation was filed against the licensee responsible for renting out his license, and his license was revoked on August 24th. Currently, there is an investigation underway against the unlicensed contractor for acting in the capacity of a contractor without a valid license. Before we move into the Solar Task Force update, I'd like you to note the general complaint handling statistics for your review, starting on page 220 and ending at page 223. All of these items are informational. I'd like to just take a quick break and see if there's any board comment or public comment, as no action is required of the board at this time.
I have a comment. Sorry, I was trying to get the little hand to go up. I just wanted to say thank you to enforcement for reporting back so quickly on the results of the enforcement and the prioritizing the different enforcement features that we're doing here, and that it's still all working and that we're still out there. It's just always good to hear those numbers and know what's going on. I know it's difficult times, and it just shows, doing a good job. So, kudos to staff, and thank you for the information.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. And yes, kudos to staff. I mean, against whether it's spending cuts, whether it's lack of personnel, I think they've really done a great job prioritizing the complaints and the issues and hitting the most serious ones. And I thank the board for the prioritization guidelines, because that's really helpful and allows for quick decision making. Any other comments or questions from any board members or public before I move on into solar? Seeing and hearing none. We're going to turn to
moderator. We do have one comment from the public.
Okay.
It is from Gilbert Collins, and he says, not to belabor the point, would the board consider a 2% give or take stipend from both non-enforcement and external enforcement budgets that would also increase along with the 0.05% increase annually for grants to schools and local community work development boards, or if nothing else, place it on the next agenda for discussion?
We could certainly ask the board chair to put that on the next agenda item for discussion. I don't think that's appropriate in the enforcement portion of this meeting.
Thank you. That's our only question or comment.
Wonderful. Then we're going to turn to page 227 of your packet. And this agenda item highlights the continued partnership between our board, the California Public Utilities Commission, and the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, formerly known as the Department of Business Oversight, in combating fraud in the residential solar industry. and the details of the enforcement strategies employed by the CSLB for this unique industry. 5 years after the formation of the Solar Task Force in 2015, CSLB continues to receive a high number of solar-related complaints monthly. Between January 1st, 2020 and September 30th, we've received an average of 100 solar-related complaints per month, a 10% increase over the prior year. The next section of the solar update starts on page 230 and addresses the requirements of Business and Professions Code 7170 as listed on that page. A staff report to meet the requirements of the Business Professions Section 7170 revealed that between July 1, 2019 and June 30th, 2020, CSLB received 1,067 solar complaints. As of November 9th, 2020, 1,014 of those complaints had been sufficiently investigated to determine the nature of the complaint, and that breakdown can also be found on page 230. You turn to page 231, you'll find a breakdown of legal and non-legal dispositions from 791 investigations that were completed between July of 2019 and June of 2020. Per the requirements of the code, the information and the above specific zip code information will be posted on the CSLB and PUC websites. On December 7th, 2020, CSLB joined their partners from the PUC and DFPI in continued collaboration of strategies to educate consumers, enforcement of existing laws, and consider enhanced consumer restitution strategies. These discussions conducted at the meeting will require an enforcement committee meeting in February of 2021 to address 2 of the PUC's proposed decisions that will absolutely impact CSLB's enforcement operations. The first of PUC's decisions will require the investor-owned utilities to provide interconnection packets to CSLB for review of potential violations. Contractors must submit an interconnection packet that includes the customer contract to the utility whenever they're hooking up to the grid. As mentioned at the September board meeting, a pilot program in which CSLB staff reviewed 153 interconnection packets revealed that over 90% of those contracts submitted did not comply with contractors' law. These findings prompted the production of the industry bulletin found on page 228, which outlines the contractual requirements when entering a residential solar installation contract. These include that the solar energy system disclosure document must be included on the front page or cover page of the residential solar energy contract. A home improvement salesperson must register with CSLB in order to engage in the business of or act in the capacity of a home improvement salesperson for a contractor. The home improvement salesperson must be registered with the solar contractor or contractors they are selling for. The contract must also include the approximate date when work will begin and the estimated completion date. And except for the down payment, a contractor may not request or accept payment that exceeds the value of work already performed or materials already delivered. Further, the contract price and all subsequent progress payments must be stated in the contract in dollars and cents. The audit parameters and enforcement expectations and strategy need to be reviewed and discussed by the enforcement committee. While I understand the benefits of proactively reviewing interconnection packets, CSLB workload must be managed and those priority guidelines we talked about earlier need to be complied with. I look forward to staff's recommendation at the proposed February enforcement committee meeting. The second of PUC's decisions that will be discussed involve a possible residential recovery fund to address the unique degree of financial harm incurred by homeowners when they enter into residential solar contracts that provide for lender payments directly to the contractor and or in advance of work performed. The PUC has proposed establishing a recovery fund to provide restitution when all other remedies have been exhausted. This can occur when a contractor is subject to license revocation, files for bankruptcy, or leaves a homeowner with no financial redress. The proposed fund would be administered by PUC and funded by a surcharge collected by the PUC when connecting to the grid. In February, the Enforcement Committee will be asked to consider the 3 following questions. If the Enforcement Committee recommends the full board support the proposed decisions, the requirement that the contractor involved in the complaint reimburse the recovery fund, and the fund's ability to move forward without a payout with an order by the registrar or designate versus waiting for a proposed decision from an ALJ. It is my understanding PUC commissioner and or staff will be present for both of the proposed decisions by the PUC. Again, informational item only. No action is required from the board, but we thought this was important to provide updates. Are there any public or board comments? That, Chair, concludes the Enforcement Committee update. Wish everybody a very happy holiday.
Thank you for that update, Kevin. Moving on to agenda item F, licensing and testing. For that, we turn our licensing committee chair, Jim Ruane, and licensing chief, Justin Paddock. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David. Good morning to everyone. You can find the licensing update on page 237. I will highlight a few items for the board. Regarding applications, the application units are still understaffed. There are currently 5 vacancies, 2 staff on prolonged leave, and 3 employees in their first month of training. The good news is a new applications manager will be starting with the board soon, and when the new staff complete their training, the backlog should begin to drop, and the processing times will decrease also. The current processing time for exam and waiver applications is approximately 7 weeks, and the goal is to reduce these processing times to 4 weeks by February. As you can see on the chart on page 240, renewals continue to be steady. The board's renewal and modification manager is set to retire at the end of December. Staff is working to quickly fill that vacancy as well as several others in the renewals unit. CSLB is on track to be fully staffed in this unit by early February. In the meantime, CSLB continues to utilize staff from other units to assist with processing renewals timely. Moving to page 246 is the call center statistics. As previously reported, call center wait times have been excessively high since April. I'm pleased to report that the call center has been working remotely since November 17th, and with this new functionality, call wait times have returned to their pre-COVID levels, average wait time of 6 minutes. Special thanks go to our call center staff, supervisors, and the IT division. As announced earlier in the meeting, the public counter is currently closed. All documents should be mailed to the CSLB, along with a check or money order payment for any fee-related transactions. The public will be able to come to our public counters at this time, but will not be able to come to our public counters at this time. But thankfully, they can call the 800 number or email us at info@cslb.ca.gov. You can find the testing update on page 253. Testing centers are unfortunately closed effective December 7th. Staff was able to reduce our pending exam count to approximately 6,000 exams. By comparison, our pre-COVID levels were approximately 4,500 exams. This exam count will begin to rise over the coming weeks with the test center closures. Once staff is able to resume testing, the centers will begin offering additional testing times in the evenings to again reduce the growing backlog. As I stated at the last meeting, if an applicant has an exam scheduled and they want to take their exam sooner, they may send an email to exams@cslb.ca.gov. Staff are often able to find earlier test dates if applicants are willing to go to a different test facility than the one they were assigned to. This is especially true for those in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is the most impacted by the test center closures because the Berkeley Test Center did not reopen in June and is not scheduled to reopen due to ongoing COVID restrictions at that facility. For this reason, staff began the closure process for the Berkeley location as part of the exam administration outsourcing process. The goal is to gain cost savings for the board as soon as possible. Due to this closure, more Bay Area candidates will be assigned to test at our Sacramento facility and the remainder scheduled in our San Jose facility. And finally, the exam development unit has held numerous workshops to continue occupational analysis work for updating existing exams. On page 255, you can see the exam staff are currently working on. Later in the licensing agenda, I will provide more detail on the new B2 residential remodeling contractor trade exam staff is currently creating. That concludes the licensing and testing update, and Justin is available if the board has any questions. Do board members have any questions or comments? Okay. Does anyone from the public have any comments?
This is the moderator. We do have a couple of comments. The first one is from Mark Taylor, and he is asking, in light of current travel and group meeting restrictions, is there any current discussions to consider outsourcing to a national testing company that would enable testing for California licenses in remote locations, including out of state?
Can you pick that up?
Certainly, Jim. Not at this time. We are actually working with our IT division to do some more remote testing development. We're able already to do remote testing development in the occupational analysis phase, and we're working with our IT department for secured ways to do item writing next. That'll be in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Any other public comments, Shelley?
Yes, our next comment comes from Daryl Cole. His question is, what is the CSLB plan to expedite testing even amid COVID-19? He had a test scheduled on December 8th and it was canceled the day before.
I certainly apologize for that. We are going to be doing what we did when we opened in June. Basically, in the order your exams were canceled, we will contact you once we have an opening date. So that would be actually the December 7th scheduled people will get contacted first, then the December 8th people. We're going to try to get our backlog down just the way we did it before, which is we're going to have a third session. Normally, in normal operations, we have a morning session and an afternoon session for exams. We're going to be doing an evening session as well. Yours truly, and I'll probably be able to cajole Tanya Corcoran in the evenings to help me administer those exams. It took us, it'll depend on how long we're closed. If it's just a month, which is what I am hoping, I hope to get back to normal numbers by about February. If it's longer, we'll just have to reassess. But we will do overtime and evening sessions throughout the state until we do get those numbers down.
Anything else, Shelley?
Yes, his follow-up question to that is, can you rent a gym or do it outside?
It would be difficult outside given the weather. What we have done is at several locations, we've created what we like to call an annex. In Sacramento, for example, what is normally our boardroom now is filled with computers so that everyone is 6 feet apart. So they're actually 8 feet apart. We've also done the same in our Norwalk facility. If I need to expand it because we stay shut down for a long time, I'll certainly consider that, and I'll work with the registrar as well as with our administrative unit to figure that out. If we're just shut down for a month, we wouldn't be looking into that. But if it is longer, then we will have to get creative.
Any more, Shelley?
One more from Philip Cuscianti. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. His question is, as of September, how many applications were processed? And is the expanding processing times related directly to staff shortages, working from home, or both?
I'll go in reverse order so I can quickly look at my processing times, which I have a report here. It is both. It's the fact that you're working from home. It is a little bit slower, admittedly, and it also is the staff shortages. Phil Cocciani works closely with the Contractors Board, and as he's aware, our applications manager retired, and so we're filling that position as well as several other key positions right now. Our exam counts are looking pretty consistent. Yeah, we still have high numbers, which is unique. The last time we had a closure, we actually had a reduction in workload, which allowed us to catch up. But right now, the exam counts are still staying consistent, just like you saw in the summer of this year.
Any more, Shelley?
Okay, and yes, we have from Gilbert Collins. Is there any processing consideration given to applicants from accredited schools?
Yes, there is, as far as experience credit. And I can discuss that more offline. If you want to get his contact information, I'm happy to talk with him about his specific situation.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the last one, Shelley?
That was it.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Justin. Next item is an update and discussion on the CSLB administered surveys. You can find information on page 259 for the new applicant satisfaction survey that went into effect in March 2020. You may recall that board members asked staff to develop a survey to gauge the satisfaction of individuals in the application process. Staff are pleased with the outcomes in the first year of this survey, about 80% satisfied with services they received. However, staff are still developing a method to survey those whose applications were void. Therefore, the data is still not representative of all of those in the application process. With that being said, the initial results do show positive feedback and a clear desire by applicants for CSLB to move to an online application process. A breakdown of the results can be found in tables 2 and 3 on pages 260 and 261. You can find the Enforcement Consumer Satisfaction Survey on page 267. The Consumer Satisfaction Survey dates back to 1993. This survey is meant to assess the satisfaction of consumers that have filed complaints against licensees with CSLB. In 2019, a total of 1,365 complainants, or 15% of those surveyed, responded to the questionnaire. A summary of the results can be found at the bottom of page 268 and are relatively consistent with the data CSLB has received over the past several years. And Justin is available if board members have any questions. Anything from the board? All right, seeing none. Anything, Shelley, from public?
Not at this time.
Two more items. Update on test development for new B2 residential remodeling license classification. Moving to item 4, please turn to page 285. As promised, I wanted to provide the board with an update on the new B2 residential remodeling contractor classification. As you know, this fall, the legislature and the governor authorized the creation of this new classification, and staff has been working to develop the necessary trade exam for this new classification. I'm happy to report that the CSLB is on track to issue this classification by August 1st, 2021. Not only are staff developing a brand new trade exam, they also have to update several IT systems and begin advertising the new classification through various media. A breakdown of the timeline to ensure this classification is ready by next summer is at the bottom of page 285. Any board comment? Seeing none, Shelley, anything from the public?
And seeing nothing from the public at this time.
Thank you. Our last item is an action item, review, discussion, and possible action to grant construction management education account awards. Please turn to page 289 for our final item. You may recall from last year that CSLB procedure changed regarding awarding CMEA grants. From now on, each December, staff will present the board with proposed grant awards for our consideration. This year, 4 institutions applied, the same as last year, and after reviewing the applications, staff proposed grant awards to the CMEA Advisory Committee based on the number of graduates each program had in that academic year. The committee made no alterations to the proposal, and it should be noted, too, that the CMA grants monies comes from volunteer contributions of our licensees. Staff now asks that we consider the grant award amounts you can find on the bottom of page 290. For purposes of reference, at the top of page 290, you can see what we approved in the prior year grant cycle. I'd like to ask the board to consider the following motion. Direct staff to distribute the 2021 CMEA grant awards according to the recommendation on page 290. And I'd like to ask for a motion.
So moved. This is
Second.
David Delatorre.
Nancy, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question for the board?
No.
Anything from the public, Shelley?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Please, will you please call the roll?
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Augie Beltran,
Aye.
Ronnie Cobos,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giordano,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marlo Richardson,
Aye.
Jim Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. And this concludes the licensing items on the agenda. Thank you, David. Back to you.
Thank you, Jim and Justin, for the update and for answering the public's inquiries. Moving on to agenda item G, Public Affairs. I turn it over to Public Affairs Committee Chair Diana Love and Public Affairs Manager Claire Goldston.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. The Public Affairs update begins on page 295 in your meeting packet. First, in the staffing area, I want to note that Rick Lopes, the longtime Chief of Public Affairs, has left CSLB to accept a position with the Department of Real Estate. We had an opportunity at our November committee meeting to thank Rick for all his work building CSLB's Public Affairs Office and his commitment to advancing our consumer protection mission over his 16 years with the board. He will definitely be missed. Until he is replaced, Claire Goldstein, the Public Affairs Supervisor, is managing the unit. And thank you, Claire, for stepping into that role. As we discussed during the board chair's comments, the Public Affairs Office was busy at the end of last week, helping to get the word to consumers, licensees, and applicants about the need to close our test centers and public counters because of the COVID-19 health emergency for at least the next 3 weeks. I'd like to thank the Public Affairs staff for their work on this effort, especially given the short time frame to get the work done. I'd like to begin the remainder of the Public Affairs update by highlighting some of the important work CSLB undertook in response to the unprecedented wildfires in California this summer and fall. As in the years past, CSLB dedicated significant resources and time to its immediate disaster response and has already begun its long-term disaster response efforts. Because of COVID-19, the response looked a bit different than in previous years, but as shown on page 296 of your packet, CSLB participated in local assistance centers in 17 counties throughout California. In some cases, this involved in-person staffing, in others, sending material, and in still others, the centers were entirely virtual. And in some instances, where we were unable to staff local assistance centers in person, staff established a special phone line to allow wildfire survivors to speak directly with a CSLB staff member. The Public Affairs Office also coordinated additional outreach of dozens of congressional and state legislator offices, as well as building departments and chambers of commerce in affected areas. And staff continue to use CSLB's partnership with the social media site Nextdoor to target outreach messages to specific neighborhoods. Planning for long-term outreach has begun. This involves working with local counties and jurisdictions to set up rebuilding workshops, one for survivors looking to rebuild and one for contractors who plan to work in the infected areas. A contractor workshop is scheduled for January the 13th in conjunction with the Valley Builders Exchange in Butte County, and Public Affairs Office staff has reached out to a number of other counties about partnering to put these workshops on. In addition, CSLB's enforcement staff have posted hundreds of signs in both English and Spanish in the affected areas, warning homeowners about the risk of hiring unlicensed contractors and warning contractors about the penalties for contracting without a license in a declared disaster zone. Lastly, CSLB continues to participate in 2 multi-agency task forces, one focused on debris removal and one focused on housing. Task force members include representatives from federal, state, and local agencies with a goal of coordinating efforts. While disaster responses has certainly been a focus since the last board meeting, I'd like to highlight some of the work of the Public Affairs Office, beginning with our video and digital services. At the bottom of page 298, you will see a list of live and recorded webcasts. The Public Affairs Office has continued to produce a live, interactive online workshop the first Friday of each month for those interested in getting a California contractor's license. The workshop is called Get Licensed to Build. We would like to thank Board Member and Licensing Committee Chair Jim Ruane for offering welcoming remarks at the November workshop. Attendance at that workshop continues to average over 200 people. You can also see that Public Affairs staff have begun producing a series of quick tips, videos for the website and social media. These short videos offer basic information about such things as how to use the Find My Licensed Contractor feature on the website and the importance of disaster survivors, hired licensed contractors. Videos currently being finalized focus on how to report unlicensed activities, how to check a license, and the risk to contractors of working without a license in a disaster zone. Public Affairs staff worked with the IT unit to replace the Disaster Help Center and the website. This page provides important information and resources for disaster survivors, contractors, and the media, and we believe it is more user-friendly and easier to navigate. Page 300 of the meeting packet outlines our social media highlights. As you can imagine, a lot of posts have continued to focus on COVID-19, including construction site safety, as well as disaster response, with a focus on worker safety during the worst of the smoky conditions and consumer protection. You can see the additional information on our social media efforts up through page 306. While the number of media calls has slowed with the pandemic, PAO did issue a press release in September to promote CSLB's presence at the Butte County Local Assistance Center and the work of enforcement staff posting warning signs about contracting without a license in the area. And the Public Affairs Office staff taped a segment for the Carey Brothers syndicated radio program called On the House about steps homeowners can take after a disaster. That program aired on November the 14th. Public Affairs staff have also issued a number of industry bulletins, most recently, as previously mentioned, announcing the closure of CSLB's test centers and public counters because of COVID-19, and reminding contractors about the importance of following home improvement contractor requirements for solar jobs. On pages 307 to 309, you can see a list of graphics and publication projects completed by our public affairs staff. Updates for the 2021 edition of the California Contractors License Law and Reference Book are on schedule and is expected to be distributed in mid to late January. The Public Affairs Office staff are also currently drafting a fall-winter edition of the California Licensed Contractors newsletter, which is also expected to be distributed in January. In addition to the Get Licensed to Build workshop mentioned earlier, Public Affairs Office staff are working on a number of other outreach efforts. These include collaboration with CSLB licensing and IT divisions for the new residential remodeling license, outreach to minority and low-income communities, and a partnership with the licensing division and the board subcommittee of Jim Ruane and Mary Tigert on women in construction. We are also working on our regular consumer and senior scam stoppers. Most recently, the Public Affairs Office staff held 2 senior scam stoppers via Zoom, one with Assemblymember Timothy Grayson and one with Senator Richard Roth. Finally, staff continues to update our employee intranet site with stories, photos, and informational updates. Certainly a time for a busy time, a most busy time for our public affairs staff. I'm sure all of you join me in thanking them for their continued hard work. Since this is an informational item, no action is required of the board. And today, Claire is joining us and is available to answer questions. At this time, are there any board comments? Hearing none. Shelley, is there any public comments?
Seeing none at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, that concludes the Public Affairs Public Update, and I want to wish everybody a happy holiday and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Diana. So then we move on to agenda item H, legislation. For that, we turn it to our Legislation Committee Chair, Augie Beltran, and Legislative Chief, Michael Jamnetsky. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. We're going to start out with H1, review and discussion on board study to evaluate sufficiency of current $15,000 contractor bond amount and possible action on study recommendations, Business and Professions Code, Section 7071.6E. Now we're on page 317 in your packets. Each year, the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee hold joint sunset review oversight hearings to review the boards and bureaus under the Department of Consumer Affairs. The CSLB is one of those boards. Its operations are reviewed by the Joint Committee every 4 years. The sunset review process provides an opportunity for DCA, the legislature, the boards, and interested parties and stakeholders to discuss the performance of the boards and make recommendations for improvements. The CSLB satisfactorily completed its most recent sunset report in a hearing early part of 2019. The legislature introduced a sunset bill that the governor signed in September of 2019 and effective January 2020. It extended CSLB's sunset date another 4 years. In addition to some minor and technical changes to the law, the sunset bill required CSLB conduct a study of the required $15,000 contractor license bond to evaluate if that amount is sufficient or if an increase is necessary. The study must be submitted to the legislature by January 1st, 2021. In November, the Legislative Committee considered a draft of the study and authorized staff to present the study for the board. The study concludes that the current $15,000 contractor bond is not sufficient and an increase is necessary. The mandate to study the bond did not ask CSLB to recommend an amount the bond should be raised to. Should it be raised at all? However, the study indicates it would not serve the purpose of the bond and may be a barrier to licensure if the bond was raised to a level that would require detailed underwriting of the contractor before the bond is issued. The study suggests that raising the license bond to around $25,000, a $10,000 increase from the current amount, would provide enhanced public protection without requiring detailed case-by-case underwriting. This report is due to the legislature January 1st, 2021. However, the act of staff submitting the study to legislature does not itself cause a statutory change that would change the bond amount. The legislature will receive the study and may or may not consider introducing a bill that would raise the bond amount. The study is in your packet for review and discussion. Chief, what do you got?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Legislative Committee did discuss this study at its November meeting, so I can answer any questions about the study itself rather than go too deep into it here. But we do want to bring to your attention, you will see in the motion at the bottom of page 317 that the staff does ask permission to make minor changes to the study after today before finalizing it. And I do want to tell the board that there are 3 minor changes that we just came across, so we want to tell you about those. The registrar, the licensing chief, and I did have the opportunity, it was actually on a Tuesday night, to speak to the head of claims and head of underwriting for a national surety company. And we were given 3 recommendations to kind of tighten up 3 areas. One is about social security numbers as a prerequisite to bonds. The study does not say that a social security number is required to get a bond, but it does emphasize that it's because the bond is a credit product, that if you don't have a credit rating, there's going to be some extra steps needed to get a bond. That this could be made more clear in the study. So we are planning to add a sentence that makes it clear that there are bond companies that will issue bonds without a social security number, but they will pay a higher rate. And there's also the option of getting somebody else, a guarantor, if you will, who does have credit, to promise that you're good for the bond. So we're going to add a sentence that makes it a little bit more clear in the study that, hey, a social security number is not you can get a bond without a social security number. We're going to make that more clear. A second change, we have a typo in our Washington state bonding prerequisites. We said in the study that a liability insurance is all that's required for a contractor's bond in Washington. That's not true. There's a $12,000 contractor's bond in Washington for general contractors and a $6,000 contractor's bond for specialty contractors. So we're going to change one line there. And finally, we're going to make a note somewhere about our $7,500 liability cap in another part of our bonding statutes. There's nothing wrong in the study about this area of the law, but we are going to add a sentence to emphasize that if the bond is raised, that's one penal sum amount, the $15,000. If that's raised, the legislature might consider raising the $7,500 liability cap. But if they do that, there's a concern that this might decrease the amount available to a homeowner. The idea being, if a material supplier gets to that bond before a homeowner, right now they're capped at $7,500. Well, if that goes up, that could increase the bond amount that a material supplier could obtain, which could decrease future homeowner claims against it. So there's nothing wrong in the study. We're just going to add a sentence about, hey, legislature, note this about the $7,500 liability cap. And that's the 3 minor changes that we would like to make to the study. And that's all I have for now, unless there's questions.
You're on
Mr. Chair, are you on mute?
Sorry about that. Any board comment? Shelley, any public comment?
Not seeing any at this time.
I see a hand raised by someone named Daryl Cole.
I do. I will unmute him. Mr. Cole, your line is unmuted. Did you have a comment?
I guess not, because I don't hear anything.
I don't either. We did receive, we do have a comment that just came in from Gilbert Collins. His comment or question is, wouldn't any increase in bond sufficiency be mitigated by enhanced processing times and increased educative indoctrination, more education and less punitive measures, i.e. contractors aren't always ethical?
Okay, we appreciate that comment, and we move forward if there's not any other public comment.
That was the last one.
Okay, thank you. Now, Legislative Committee recommendation is that the board authorize staff to make any minor or technical changes to the draft study, including any changes recommended by the board, and present a final version of the study to the legislature by January 1st, 2021, as required by Business and Professions Code 7071.6. Chief, I got a question. So you said there's a couple of changes, but this comes as a fully formed motion. Is that going to change that at all?
That's a good question. The motion does ask that the board authorize staff to make any minor and technical changes to the draft study, including any changes recommended by the board, and then prevent a final version of the study. So I believe that that language, even if it comes as a fully formed motion, would authorize staff to make any minor and technical changes to the study.
Well, let's play it on the safe side.
Sure.
The chair would accept a motion to do what Chief just said. Anybody out there?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any board comment? Shelley, any public comment?
Seeing none at this time.
Okay, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, sorry about that. I did neglect to mention one thing. I apologize. I just want to thank Mr. Phil Vermillion for setting up that meeting, and also thank former board member Linda Clifford for providing us indispensable resources and contacts during the study. I meant to say that at the beginning. I apologize. Continue.
Great. Thank you so much. Felice, please call roll.
David Delatorre,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamira,
Yes.
Maggie Beltran,
Aye.
Rodney Cobbles,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giarratano,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Jimmy Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson, Johnny,
Aye.
Mary, Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Jaggert.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Okay, H2. Review, discussion, and possible action on legislative proposal that would make illegal dumping a cause of discipline for licensed contractors. We're on page 363 of your packet. This item involves requests from a member of the California State Assembly Member Quirk, that the CSLB consider being the official sponsor of a legislative measure next year involving the illegal dumping of construction materials. Chief Jay, why don't you explain a little bit about this?
Sure. The legislative committee did extensively discuss this measure in November, so I can certainly answer any questions about it for the other members. But basically, it does make the unlawful dumping of construction debris a cause of disciplinary action against the contractor's license. Now, this activity is already illegal, local and state and penal code and local laws. But what we discovered when this was going to be a measure last year in working with the author's office, that a number of counties, Alameda, Contra Costa, Los Angeles, have had some real difficulty with this activity. Apparently, there have been some bona fide findings of licensed contractors doing this. And I understand sorry, it looks like we just got a question on a prior agenda item. I understand that it's made it difficult to prosecute contractors for this activity. It hasn't been rewarding. So this measure would be an additional deterrent to allow CSLB to discipline contractors for this activity. And I can answer any questions.
Thanks, Chief. Do we have anything from the board? Any comments? Shelley, do we have any public comment?
Member Altamira asked if we missed a fully formed motion regarding the bond study.
No, we made it was a fully formed motion, but since there were some changes from staff, we decided to make the motion instead of just carrying forward with the fully formed motion. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, and there's nothing else this time.
Okay, well, Legislative Committee recommendation, recommend that the board approve Assembly Member Quirk's request that the CSLB sponsor a legislative measure that would make illegal dumping of construction materials a cause for discipline for licensed contractors. Since this recommendation comes from a committee of the board, it comes to you as a fully formed motion. It needs no first or second prior to the vote. Does the board have a comment or question on the motion? Shelley, does the public have a comment on the motion?
Haven't received any at this time.
Thank you. Felice, call roll.
David Delatory,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese. Kevin,
Yep, aye, sorry.
Frank Altamara,
Yes.
Maggie Beltran,
Aye.
Rodney Cobles,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giancarlo,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Jim Wayne,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
Nancy Springer,
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. We're on H3. At the end of this, we're going to ask for a motion from the board. We're going to review, discussion, and possible action on staff recommendations for legislative proposals to make minor, technical, or non-substantive changes to the contractor state license law. Omnibus bill cleanup request. We're on page 371 of the packet. Every year, the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee invites ideas for technical, non-substantive, non-controversial ideas for changes to the law. These minor changes to the law are usually considered in an expansive measure called an omnibus bill that is introduced each year to clean up different sections of state codes. In the packet are ideas from CSLB staff for this year's omnibus bill that are here for board consideration and possible approval. Chief, what do you got?
Sure, I'll just go through these real quickly. The first one to change the title enforcement representative in our statutes where it's listed to special investigators. Earlier this year, our enforcement representatives were reclassed as special investigators. So we want to tighten that up in the law. The next change would just clarify that our specialty C22 asbestos abatement contractor license, we just want to put that in statute as one of the classifications that is appropriate to perform asbestos work. It has been since 2015, but it's in our regulation, not in statute. We're just going to plop it into the appropriate statute. And then the next two changes really are the definition of minor, they're typos. One would provide the correct section number in a reference to the letter of admonishment program. And the other would clean up a reference in the sole disclosure document. And I can answer any specific questions about any of these.
Wonderful. Board, any questions on the chief's report here? Shelley, anything from the public?
Not seeing anything at this time.
Wonderful. Bringing it back to the board, the chair would entertain a motion to authorize staff to submit to the Senate Business, Professions, Economic Development Committee the 4 technical, non-substantive proposal for changes to the contractor state license law that the chief had mentioned. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does the board have a question on the motion or the second? Shelley, how about the public? Do they have a question?
Not seeing any at this time.
Wonderful. Felice, please call roll.
David Delatory,
Aye.
Kevin Albanese,
Aye.
Frank Altamara,
Yes.
Maggie Beltran,
Aye.
Rodney Cobles,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Don Giancarlo,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Marla Richardson,
Aye.
Jim Wayne.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Nancy Springer.
Yes.
Mary Taggart.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. We're on number 4, which is only informational. It's an update on previously approved legislative proposals. We're on page 377. This item explains the legislative proposals previously approved by the board for which board staff are currently seeking authorship for the 2021 legislative year. Chief, do you have a very brief summary?
Yes, the summary is that we've got these proposals out to different prospective authors right now, and I'm on the phone and on email trying to get secured authorship. It's looking positive. I don't want to name any names yet for potential authors as we don't have confirmations, but we are optimistic that we will be successful with these measures. And please let me know if you have any questions about these measures that are previously approved by the board for which we're seeking authorship that are described on page 377.
Awesome. Does the board have any questions of the chief? Shelley, how about the public?
Not seeing any at this time.
Great. Mr. Chair, we kick it back to you. We're done with Ledge.
Augie, Mike, thank you for that update. There being no further business coming before this body, this meeting's adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone, and stay safe.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays. Thank you.
Holidays, thank you.
Be safe.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Same to you guys.